Liam, stagflation, are we really back to that?
Nothing to do with antlers or hunting, Tom. Stagflation, it's a sort of 1970s term. I wrote about it in my economics A-level all those years ago. It's when you get the combination of slow growth, even recession or stagnation, that's the economy contracting, and inflation. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because an hour or so ago, we were talking about good economic news with mortgage rates coming down from the TSB and Nationwide, and we'll come on to that. But here you have one of the leading economic think tanks, the National Institute. It's been around since the 50s and 60s, completely cross-party, partly government-funded, but ferociously independent. And they're now saying that the UK could go into a recession. Just when the Bank of England said, we think the UK will avoid recession. So it just shows you the economy's on a kind of on a knife edge. It could go either way. There's a lot of uncertainty swirling. That's why one minute I'm saying things are looking good, the next minute I'm reporting that people are saying things aren't that good. A lot of uncertainty. Let's have a look at what the National Institute actually said. It's run by a very distinguished economist called Dr. Jajit Chadha, and Dr. Chadha said in the latest report from the National Institute, until we ignite economic growth, a substantial proportion of households will struggle with high housing and food costs, poor transportation, a creaking healthcare service and dwindling savings. It's not a promising inheritance for the next government. And there you have it. That's from Dr. Jajit Chadha. And it's interesting, isn't it? He's sounding a bit like Liz Truss there. Oh, we've got to go for growth. It just goes to show you, you know, we do need economic expansion. We do need economic growth. Even the National Institute says that. And I'm not saying this is going to completely change the political outlook, but it's interesting that the National Institute, they're stressing regional inequalities. If you drill down into their report, there's lots of stuff about, as you'd expect, London and the South East, living standards are holding up better. And in some of the regions, the Midlands, in particular the North East, living standards have been slipping. But Chadha is saying that the Bank of England, if it keeps raising interest rates, they're starting to agree, sound more like me. If they keep raising interest rates, they are actually going to bring about a recession without necessarily bringing down inflation.
And it was only 24 hours ago that we were saying the cost of living crisis is starting to ease.
Absolutely.
So that's in contradiction to that.
No one knows what's going to happen. Obviously, this is economics, right? It's educated guesswork, and that's coming from me. But it's so complicated. Look, the UK economy could be whacked at any moment by, you know, surging oil prices, given if war escalates even more in the Black Sea between Russia and Ukraine. The Saudis and the Russians are working together, OPEC and the Russians, keeping oil prices high. We don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know is that not everyone agrees with what the National Institute is saying. Some people actually feel that there won't be a recession, that interest rates are going to start coming down very soon, and that's why some of the big mortgage providers are now lowering their mortgage rates, believe it or not. Let's have a look at those factoids if we can. So we know that the Bank of England last raised interest rates last week to 5.25%. But now a lot of people think they're not set to peak at 6.25, 6.5, 6.75. Futures markets now suggest that the interest rate from the Bank of England is set to peak at 5.75. So that means just one or two more rate rises. I personally think there will only be one. And we now know that the average two-year mortgage fix is 6.84%. But Nationwide and TSB, they have a long history as mutuals, slightly softer, slightly kinder lenders. They are now announcing that from today and later this week, they are cutting their standard variable mortgage rate by 0.55%. Even though the Bank of England may raise rates at least once or twice more. Why are they saying that? Because they're lending money for 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, 10 years, and they think over that period, interest rates on average will be lower than they are now, and that's why they can lower their standard variable mortgage rate.